On Monday, April 27th. Jody?
Oh, yes.
Depending on how we structure.
Good afternoon. Please note, committee of the whole meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with section 20 sub 2 of the Access to Information Act and section 4 sub C of the Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to atip@highriver.ca. That is ATIPP@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. Adoption of today's agenda. We'll ask for a motion from Councillor Brookwell that the Committee of the Whole adopt the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting April 27th as presented.
I'll give you that motion.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the last Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Cooey that the Committee of the Whole adopt the minutes from the April 13th Committee of the Whole meeting as presented.
I'll give you that motion.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Business today, 4.1 town sponsorship policy. Alex?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Hello, Council, Mayor. So I'm here to present our council direction requests along with our sponsorship framework. I know we've kind of gone over this one a few times over as an organization the past couple of years. The main thing is the sponsorship policy has been updated since 2014, and also with being consistent and having transparency across the board, that's something we'd like to get in line a little more. And also with the current sponsorship policy right now, we have two external agreements with two user groups, that being the High River Flyers and the Highwood Curling Club, who have a unique agreement in terms of sponsorship within the facility. We know right now with the current policy there is some inconsistencies in that, and those two agreements being some examples of that. The opportunity here is to align with council's priorities on what next steps on what some of this framework of this new sponsorship policy and model could look like. And with those alignments, we can take those priorities and those alignments to engagements and working with user groups in terms of setting the goalposts in advance and then moving forward next to that stage. The proposed approach is standardizing the policy and kind of setting those parameters so we have a standard approach and plan to take to these user groups when we move on to that engagement phase. And with some of the options you see here in front of you, we have some initiatives that we can evaluate and look at in terms of which pathway we go. Administration right now has evaluated a lot of these, and with the town-led shared revenue model, it will open up the door and create more consistency, and also really focus on local user groups in terms of benefiting from the larger sponsorship model that we're going to encompass, and two, would promote and encourage more facility utilization, indoor and outdoor, within not just our the Bob Sondergaard Recreation Complex, but also fields. These are some of the things administration had noticed, within the past while of there being opportunity there as well to encompass that same model. And it would be based on a percentile, as well as to, having, the ability to utilize the building a bit more, and then at the same time too, also, focusing on how those funds get distributed and creating that policy as well. And that would be, like I said, come down to based on facility utilization, Are you local? What percentage of your users are local? And then that would be, how we would, the step after the policy to dole out the funds. So that would be the recommendation there from the administration level is, a shared revenue model like that. If you see on the report, we have a lot of opportunities in terms of sponsorship opportunities currently in the building. A lot of those on the templates as well are existing ones we do have. And also too, we wouldn't focus on the smaller, doors on it, like sponsors on the doors or different things like that. We would focus on the higher level, parts of the building. For example, naming rights, Zambonis, our current wall, arena signage program, which does very well, year over year. And in addition to that, based on a high level view of the facility right now in naming rights, we could look at around 120K a year, in terms of selling different parts of the building. So that's just a breakdown on some of the inventory there. Like I said, next steps would be, setting the goalpost and then going to the user groups to see what this policy would look like, keep them engaged, and then also then developing how funds get distributed, whether it's through an application grant process, there's kind of our open framework there to kind of create that. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions on that.
If I may just chime in, as a bit of value add on that. So when looking at this program, Alex and myself looked at the previous council discussions, and I do know there was a request of our groups to have sales within our facilities for different sponsorship areas. This does create a bit of an issue, and I experienced it in my previous tenure, of cross sales. And that is when we have different groups going to the exact same community businesses. So minor hockey shows up on Monday, figure skating on Tuesday, curling on Wednesday, and basically businesses are now held to really defend themselves of why they're supporting certain groups and not others. It also is an extreme ministerial challenge to ensure consistency on signage, consistency on, I'd say, general design, but also what we're permitted to have in buildings. All of a sudden a liquor signage does sneak up, or maybe some marijuana or items like that. So ensuring we have control, because we do have legislative guidelines to hit within these facilities for youth service provision. So the question became, okay, if the funding is the chase for council to assist these groups, how can we facilitate that? This program looks at going after the high value sponsorship, and that is the naming rights within the facilities. And that allows us to have that distribution piece back out to these groups. This is, again, trying to get two birds with one stone. His worship did ask me at one point, early in my tenure here, how do we get our local groups wanting to play here? How do we get them back in our facilities? And this is one way we can do it, is reward utilization of our facilities by allowing this sponsorship to help fund it as well. So it's that, how can we direct money back into our user groups? How can we reward them for utilizing our assets? How can we keep that in our local environment?
Is there, that's option 2 you're talking, correct?
That's the, yes, that's correct.
So is there any expectation that they sell any advertising, or is still done by the town? And then we just offer, for, like you said, utilization of the space, sort of a reward for being there?
This would be controlled by the town. Now, one of the areas where we see the possibility for that partnership of helping us get there is when working with these groups, they see the value of us selling the sponsorship. So their network connections to these groups, to the community business and corporate business side, adds value directly back to their pocket. So that's where we'll work with the groups on full design of this plan, the policy generation, to also assist in that prospecting side for us.
But there isn't an expectation that they sell?
There is not.
Okay.
Michael?
Couple of things. attracting user groups back to the facility. My understanding, or perhaps my misunderstanding, is that user groups have gone outside of, and let's be specific, because I think this generally generates more around hockey than anything else. They go outside of the community because there's been scheduling challenges. And I'm not saying the scheduling challenges are because of the facility or the people that are doing the scheduling. It's a matter of groups booking things, not using things when they had them booked. There's, let's call it a myriad of confusing things that are applicable to that happening, right? So I'm not sold on sponsorship bringing groups back. To me, that doesn't make sense. Because I don't think that's the crux of the problem, is that they're not here because there's no sponsorship dollars. When we talk about doing the sponsorship, that is another level of workload that will be put on you and your team. I don't know how it's administration's responsibility to fundraise for local groups. I think fundraising is a part of the group. I'll personally use an example of my boys playing soccer at a competitive level in Calgary. We did not go to the city of Calgary and say, hey, raise money for us because Michael wants his boys to play soccer. It was the club, the team, the players, the parents that went and did that, right? If I want my child to participate in something, I'm going to support it to the abilities that I have. Sponsorship is one of those things. So I assume when we're talking about sponsorship as well, we're talking about reducing fees to use the facility. We're not talking about taking those sponsorship dollars and buying jerseys, balls, bats, hockey sticks, pucks, whatever it might be.
I don't think it says in there.
Hey?
But it doesn't say in there.
No, but what are the sponsorship dollars used for, right? In this case, if we're, meaning the town administration, is running a sponsorship program and getting those dollars, what are we gonna allocate those dollars to? Simply, I would think we put it towards the facility and the use, the rental of ice or the rental of a ball field or something like that. And I'm challenged with that, taking on that course of work. That's just me. You gotta, did you just put your hand up?
Yeah.
Or you
Yeah, so that's your formality.
There's not many formalities in committee.
That is where we talked about key initiatives. My previous experience, we chased, it was council's initiative to chase every sponsorship opportunity. And the ROI wasn't there on the smaller ticket items. So you're spending 30 hours chasing a $500 sign. It doesn't pay off. We end up spending more on staffing than we do on return.
Yeah.
That is where this program looks at those high-level naming rights. And this is where I do see the ROI for the municipality to procure these. These are high-ticket values. When you're looking across four, you can call it an average of $120,000 on an annual, looking at the four different locations within BSRC. And we found historically, once you work with groups, and especially on a corporate level at that dollar value, we become a blip on their radar of a budget line item, and renewals become extremely easy. That's where we start seeing a 5-year contract renew with a phone call. And that's where I do see the investment for administration's time being of value. Now I agree with you, it does come back to funding rate structure, and that's where we did say option 3 is we keep that funding in-house and use it to directly subsidize rates. This is an option that was looking at that middle ground. If they want an opportunity to be on our walls, and we see the difficulty with that and have listed the cons in this report, here's a way that we are subsidizing their rate directly back to them. You've utilized our facilities, you've had a spend with us, we are kicking back a portion back to your rates, and the remainder stays within municipality, that's why it's per portion, for capital renewal, for our own rate structure subsidization, but it does acknowledge. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think there is a time for groups to go out and sell their jerseys, sell the naming rights on that sort of tail end of, under the number there. But the question that the groups had coming to council was, how do we get on the walls of the BSRC? Now, in watching the council videos, there was a number of discussions around keeping the look of the facility one of crisp, clean, publicly provided, not a, for lack of a better term, a European hockey arena, where every square inch is sold. So we looked at how do we generate the highest value of funds with the lowest level of input, control the looks of the facility while still having that kickback to groups that they are searching for. So that was the intention of that. I hope that, I think I got all three of yours in there. If I missed one, please let me know.
Vic?
I guess when I look at the three options, the two options with the greatest involvement for the town, they don't look to me as much as developing community engagement. They look like control. And under any option, your briefing note doesn't set this out, but under any option, the town can always maintain control of the size, the appearance, and the applicability of the signage. But taking away the fundraising portion, the community engagement portion, I think is a disservice to the user groups. And I think the user groups are looking for a way to generate more energy within their own groups. They're not looking for us to take it all over and then let them come to us with their hands out. I don't think that helps a community group, a community organization. I think that kind of sterilizes it all. So the options or the portions of it that I would like to see enhanced would be their ability to participate. Not in the naming rights, the high level naming rights, fine. The town should retain those. I'm talking about signage at baseball fields. We're all used to, you grow up with baseball fields that had the visual clutter, which is a term I find a little bit offensive, but anyway, on the fences, that just shows community support for those kids. It gives those kids a sense of value. It gives those kids a sense of, gee, there's a good reason to be in this sport. The community supports it, this business supports it. We've got to look at the human side of it, not just, whether we can get more money for the facility this way and dole some out to these community groups in our discretion. That doesn't make a lot of community-based sense to me. It might be a good financial model, but I don't think it's going to help your community groups grow. And I know the two groups that are anxious to grow are the soccer people and the baseball people. They're anxious to get involved in their own growth and in development of sponsorships. And the town-based options here just negate that entirely. And I wouldn't be supportive of either of them on that basis. Maybe a mixture with certain naming rights left to the town, other signage left to community groups to initiate. And if a business gets approached by several different teams, then the business has to make a decision. And if the community groups aren't all successful with that business, well, there are other businesses. It keeps them out in the community as well. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Jen?
I had to disagree just a little bit because it is our building. And so there has to be some control. So even if they go and get the signs, it's still our staff doing most of the work in getting the signs, putting them up, maintaining them, doing all that kind of stuff. All of the sports do fundraising. There's lots of options to do fundraising that isn't the signage, right? Like my kids have been in a ton of sports. And so going out in the community and they're gonna be doing that anyways. So I feel like I like option 2, where there is the ability to give back, but we still keep control and have, you know, some discretion there. Now there might be, and we've talked about baseball fields, and we don't want them full of flapping signs that are wrecked in the wind. We've discussed that time and time again, but if that were to change, I feel there's lots of other opportunities for sports, because it's not just, so right now it's the Flyers get the money, but there isn't just Flyers that do hockey there, right? So then how do you control, how do you get Flyers and minor hockey and, right, all to be able to contribute to that exact same program? Option 2 is the way to do that, my opinion.
Got it?
I actually feel this is a much more equitable way, because a little further to what Jenny said, figure skating gets nothing.
That's
But
right.
they probably have similar eyes in that arena, where this is going to allow even those smaller user groups some benefit of this work. Those other ones like the Flyers and that have been selling, if any of them, if those boards are full, they all will benefit. So the community, I think, will buy in. If there's gaps, that just means their disbursement is smaller. I like the idea versus a discount on your rate, and I guess it's maybe neither here nor there, is that they get the money. They know where they need the support, how they need to spend their money, whether it's busing or whatever it is. You know, I guess either way, whatever's easiest, I guess, for us to manage is probably the best way, because it is going to be an onerous task. But I think if we really start to look at and focus on naming rights, those dollars are gonna be way more significant than just the wall signs in there, and that every user group is gonna benefit versus just those few. So I like number 2.
So going a little bit of history for you, Vicki, on this, because in an ideal world, I'm 100% with you, but what's happened in the past is that the hockey is the big, they got the most members, they got the most kids, they can do the most compared to lacrosse or especially figure skating, right? So what happened was that hockey was selling off boards in the rink and they were keeping the money, and then the wall's full and there's no, figure skating has no room, even if they found a sponsor, but where do we put it? Well, the wall's full, you can't. So that's where the inequitable piece became between the clubs, and it was definitely a hockey dominated thing. So, you know, in option number 2, I guess the fairness of it, you know, we're selling the advertising, we're selling the boards in the rink and wherever else. I'm 100% with you on the outdoor stuff. I don't like it. I don't want a town looking like NASCAR every time you turn around, right? Or a European hockey jersey. But it's the division of those funds then as to who gets how much. Hockey is going to win again, right? It's just, that's who, they're the largest user group in there, so they're gonna win again. So that's where, and how do you guys split that percentage up? You know,
By
I mean,
usage.
like if you ask for, well, give me a list of how many figure skaters you got, and then give me a list of how many hockey players you got, and that's what we're gonna use to divvy up that money.
No, it's by usage.
By usage.
By time of
Time
use
on
of
Well,
ice.
okay, same thing, hockey's gonna win.
But then there's also the Flyers versus minors, right? Or the, whatever, I don't know how many different hockey groups we have here.
Exactly, right? So that's tough, to balance that out fairly. Whereas option number 3, we do it, it's our building, it's our facility, we do it, and we can spread that money again, how do you spread that money out? But overall, the operational cost, which can possibly reduce their user fees. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out, because it's happened in the past where, hockey did sell the flyers, sold a banner that was not part of, sold it to the brewery in town and put the booze ad on the boards, and we stepped in and take it down. So I'm trying to reduce the messiness of the whole thing. As far as this isn't enough money that's going to make a big difference to any one of the groups, hockey, figure skating, lacrosse. Like, we're not talking enough money that.
It makes a difference.
It makes a difference, but I mean, we're talking compared to, I'll be honest, my kid plays a lot of hockey and lacrosse. He couldn't tell you one board
Nope, I agree with
that's
that.
up in it's not even remotely on his brain. What's on his brain is when you guys gotta go out and fundraise, you guys gotta go do a bottle drive. It gets him off the couch, gets him engaged, and he's actively involved in going and doing it. That's what's meaningful for him. The advertising up on the walls, that's adult. It's all adult. I wanna put one up for my business.
It's the audience.
I'm not going after the kids. I'm going after the adults that are looking at it, right? So, on a marketing perspective, which is part of this, if you're a business and you're gonna do that, there's a marketing, that's why there's so many realtors up there. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just trying to reduce the messiness of it,
So,
the historical.
I understand the proportional distribution challenge. One, I think that is a key important time to have the communication with those groups. How do we break this down equitably across all of our user groups? And that's why this report is in front of you, to check those goalposts, make sure we aren't heading out to sell or generate an idea that is not council supported. So first stop here. The one bit, I do believe that utilization should impact the flow of funds when you do look at, so yes, minor hockey is a big one. We have a high number of kids playing that sport, and we are reflecting that in our funding strategy. Where does our dollars stretch the furthest in recreation? And I think that's why we do need to look at utilization. And one of the challenges, if you aren't going to have it be reflective of utilization, would be potential overfunding. Let's say there is a group that has annual utilization that has a value of 3,000 and they're pulling 6 out of this funding scenario. Well, the question lies of where's the additional 3 going? So it ensures that it ensures that cap is, okay, are you actually putting it back into facilitating the program that you're fundraising for? You're fundraising for figure skating, so we can have a figure skating club and kids can be out on the ice skating. You're fundraising for ball, so kids can be out on the field playing ball. And I think that's important. 25% is important in plan 2 of how does that money distribute. We need to be very clear how we're utilizing the 75% internally to our organizations of how are we reincorporating this funding into that service level provision for you, whether that's out in your outdoor field or your indoor or pool or take your pick. How are we generating these funds back into this community? And I think pulling corporate funds is such a powerful way to do it. It helps all of us. Like, yes, we're talking about a 25% kids, 75% internal usage. The full package, that is a reduction of tax burden, and that's something we need to communicate out to all user groups and all taxpayers of this is why we're chasing this corporate level sponsorship, is to lower the burden on our residents. So I believe it comes with a strong communication piece. And if I may, I think that's where it directs into our questions today. And I think I've got the answer, so I'll speak out loud and looking for if I've misread the room. So council supporting a Sponsorship approach that prioritizes high-value naming rights while maintaining existing sponsorship locations and limiting additional signage. So in ours, in the proposal in front of you, it does not increase a whole bunch of locations. And Vicky, to your point, we do not have a bunch of fenced signage in this proposal for groups to sell individual pieces. Now, that was the message we had understood of, we don't want it loaded up like that. So the first and foremost check is, are we in alignment that we aren't looking to increase the portfolio to have additional signage locations beyond what we currently have or naming rights?
Well, if you don't want the clutter all the time, you could even allow these groups to sell fence signage that they can take with them. If they're playing a game, they've got an audience, they put the signs up. I don't know. I think you have to encourage, I mean, you're all talking about hockey, but worldwide, soccer is the fastest growing sport in the world. And we're missing this boat in a big way if we don't encourage at least the soccer groups. Baseball seems to be on the decline, I don't know why, but soccer is not. And to not allow them to put up any fencing signage at all, whether it's temporary, removable, or permanent, whatever, I think does a disservice to that sport and to the kids and the families who can't afford. I have a grandson in AA hockey. I know what the costs are in hockey, and I know that most of the families in High River can't afford hockey. Most of them can't. They can't afford soccer. And so if we encourage a sport like that, I think that would be helpful. And I don't, bringing in more control by our bureaucracy, I don't think encourages the local community groups. That's just how I'm gonna vote.
I would like to see dugouts considered. I think it's way better than fence signage, just because of we've seen some winds lately and our climate, and again, I think it's just a little bit cleaner. I guess my one concern when we talk about soccer pitches, I'm just trying to think of our soccer pitches, and there aren't fences. There are no fences. There's, the new one that we just took over is a school fence, then we need to talk to the Christ Redeemer. The library, which is a well-utilized one, there's no fence there. So I think we need to, if we're talking soccer pitches, it almost needs to be a naming opportunity where there's something permanent. There aren't really opportunities for temporary signage at some of those facilities.
Well, there sure won't be if we put this policy in place. If anything changes on those facilities, there won't be any opportunity, period.
Yeah, I'm just saying there isn't a physical opportunity to do it. That's the.
And this is not gonna improve.
I think even today, I like your idea about the, if they got something they wanna put up during their game, like you could do that today, right? Like if they wanna sell a sponsorship to X, Y,
But they
Z,
can't keep
something.
it there.
Yeah, and they put it up for their game, they take it down, and you can do that today.
Yeah, because they do that at by the ball diamond, they advertise like the car shows and stuff across, along that fence on 12. If there's been banners of different events and
Like at the
stuff.
school?
No, he's
No,
talking about our signage policy.
The signage wise, where they're advertising for events, they do that kind of now, when they're using those fences, whether they maybe don't get approval, they just strap them up to the fence, because that's a visual spot, or do they do get approval?
It has run through an approval process and is a designated location in our signage policy program for that, to advertise specific community events.
So, Chris, do you have what you need from us today to
I'll just finalize on my last couple questions to ensure clarity.
thank you?
So, again, I heard dugouts, but does council support the inclusion of outdoor recreation spaces in our naming right question for the soccer fields and the baseball diamonds? Is there any objections to having naming rights sold for those assets?
What about the tennis and pickleball court? Why wouldn't we name those?
See, a naming right for a specific ball diamond sounds fine for me. What I don't want is 42 little banners along the back fence of a ball diamond, right? All flapping, who's managing that, who's taking care of it, and like I said, again, I'll continue to say, I don't wanna turn that river into a NASCAR, right?
So that is what is recommended in this report, is for the naming
Just
right
the naming
provision
rights
of
for it,
those fields.
What
But
happens
it
at
would
the
have a
school?
board,
A
It
school,
would have
you
a
wouldn't be able
board.
to do
No,
it.
I didn't.
like, if you rename those soccer pitches, you're proposing then to have like a board signage saying that this
There would be a
is-
signage saying, this is Chris Bruce's soccer field, Chris Bruce Corporation XYZ.
Right.
At the ones that don't have the fence type thing, that's
That's
what you're proposing.
So A, it gives a term of reference when you're saying, hey, we're going to go play at X field. And B, it does provide funding source for that location.
So we've got Birchwood and George Lane.
Yeah.
For our ball diamonds.
And
The only
now
And
you
Highwood.
just.
Hey.
And Highwood, don't
But
we?
I
Or no?
was,
I
I
don't
was
think
a
we just do a
school,
school.
Okay.
right?
So you wouldn't have to-
Unless you got an agreement with the school that,
Yeah.
but for the town-owned ones, it's just the two.
And last one, we do have 2 sponsorship agreements in place currently. The Junior B and the curling club, if council does elect to move forward with support of option 2. The question being, do we want to continue those and that just excludes them from option 2? Or do we want to incorporate them? The junior program, I came from an organization that had an SJHL team, and that was looked as professional sport versus recreational. And council did elect to run them as a separate group outside of our recreational sponsorship agreement, and that would be their board signs. Or the question being, would you like to see that incorporated back in and then become part of this as a greater whole?
Can I just ask clarification? Does the flyers only take actual board signs, not the signs on the wall?
Correct.
And then I had another, I haven't seen I didn't curl last year, but I don't think the signs in the curling rink have changed in many years. So I'm not sure that that one's gonna be an issue.
The curling is boards and ice logos.
Oh, the ice logos, absolutely, yeah.
The right.
The signs on the wall or what hasn't really
Yeah.
changed.
Question, have the Flyers, sent their 180-day renewal letters, or no?
I haven't seen anything yet, no.
So they haven't asked to renew? So then we're on a 30-day clause if we don't want to continue on with that. Just asking.
So can I have clarification again? Who sells right now the signs on the wall in the Recplex?
We do.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
is us.
Yeah, so we just do.
But
the
we're
wall.
right now keeping 100% of those proceeds.
Yes,
And now if we do this, 25% of that is gonna go back to the user groups.
yes, because it would encompass the whole income of naming rights, walls like we're doing. We did have an interest in the Zamboni over the past year as well. Also, we used to do the Zamboni in past operations.
So would that include the $5,000 from the Flyers agreement? Would that also be 75-25?
Like, on our existing ones that we run,
On the one that's up for renewal in August?
that would be, it would have to be does council want us to continue that agreement? And then the Flyers would not be a part of this shared revenue model? Or do we not do that agreement and then they would be a part of the revenue sharing? But to, like Chris said, that's a very different model of operations that they're running, where, some of those dollars that they're seeing now versus what they're gonna see if they join this revenue model might have, operational implications for them, because it is a very different model, it's a higher level, it is a provincial level versus, someone coming in and, maybe doing some a little more leisure or recreational on a, more amateur level.
So they would be accepted out from this policy?
Yeah, they would, it would just be something that's its own thing, it's grandfathered in, and they would not be part of the 25%,
If we agree.
if we agree.
See, I wouldn't agree with that. It's either, you've got to be fair to everybody.
Do you got what you need? I just wanna start to move
Same
on.
time, The only one I do need clarity on is bringing those groups in or not. I've heard one opinion on wanting to see them
I think it
form
should,
part of
I think it
this
should
year.
all be the same.
Okay.
Because that's what our problem is, we have this one doing this, and this one
Yeah.
doing that, and this one doing
Yeah.
that. I like to, if we do a model, it needs to be
I would-
consistent.
I would be curious what the financial implications of that was going to be. If the Flyers are now looking at a $5,000 income and it's gonna drop to 2,500, you know, I think probably with the exception of some tournaments, they're putting the most eyes in those seats. I could be wrong, but that would be my concern is eliminating them. They're bringing in 25,000?
It says estimated is 25,000 that they bring in along the boards.
I mean, they have some, I mean, they're busing they have some really expensive bills to cover their travel and that, and so I would just really hate to debilitate that group, by bringing them in. I appreciate why we would bring them in, but I also think it might really tie their hands.
Let's bring a couple options of whether Flyers are in or out of this thing.
Hearing the support, we'll definitely work with our groups to finalize policy to bring forward to council of what that distribution detail looks like. We just, thank you for the conversation today, I really do appreciate it, it just gives that scope. We didn't want to go out and meet with these groups and sort of lead them down a trail that we couldn't pursue. Thank you, love it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Just so everybody knows, I want to be done these other two items. We have to do them because we're going in, they're both part of the regular council meeting, so, but I want to be done these two by 2:30 so that we have time for public Q&A at the end here. So, Jordan, I know, staring right at me, Jordan. So the budget amendment, this one's pretty simple.
Okay. I'll talk fast. I had a cookie, so I've got extra energy.
There's 42 more over here if you want.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this briefing is to walk through the chronology of the proposed 2026 budget amendment that's going to bring to Council later this afternoon and explain how we moved from the original approved budget to the position before Council today. When Council approved the 2026 operating budget, the tax levy was based on, if you could, I don't know, it's controlling it down to the spreadsheet, just to speed things up. At that time, where was I? The tax levy was based on an estimated assessment base. It's the first column on the top, left, thank you. At the time, I noted that a tax model was based on estimates and would be subject to adjustment once the final assessment roll was completed. So based on that model, the approved budget produced a projected tax rate increase of approximately 3.3%. with an estimated average monthly household impact of about $30. Earlier this year, after budget was approved, administration received the finalized assessment base from the town assessor. The final assessment came in at approximately 1% lower than originally estimated. That's the second column. To be fair to the town assessor, a 1% variance on an estimate of this size is actually really quite good. Just ended up being lower. That change matters because the tax rate is calculated based on the two main factors, the levy, which council approved, and the assessment base. So when the assessment base is lower, the tax rate must increase to generate the same levy. And so you can, or same levy. With no change to the approved tax levy, the lower assessment base moved the projected tax rate increase from 3.3 to 4.5. So this is what we were kind of warning about with all the caveats. With a small decrease in the assessment, you will see a change in the rate, but it's looking at 4.5 now. The tax rate must increase to generate the same levy. So that's kind of where we are. It doesn't change the levy, it doesn't change the average household impact. So I just want to take one pause at this point here. The assessment roll was declared in late February this year. Because of that timing is later than a typical budget cycle, it creates a gap between the assessment figures used for budget modeling and the final assessment figures used in the tax bylaw. So Stuart, the town assessor, and me came before council recently to discuss the challenges related to that appeal process. One of the issues discussed was the timing of our declaration compared to larger municipalities. We think that an earlier declaration can solve some of those issues, and this budget process highlights another reason why continuing to work toward an earlier declaration could be helpful. So I just wanted to point that out. We'd have a little bit more accurate assessment numbers, so you wouldn't see these variations in taxes. Anyway, going back to the walkthrough, administration understood that council expressed interest during budget deliberations in keeping the tax rate increase below that 4% range. If you remember, we were discussing that. So in response of this, after getting the new assessment base, or the final assessment base, we reviewed the operating budget and tried to determine if any condition changes. Since budget approval took place, we weren't looking for reducing service levels or making arbitrary cuts just because we wanted to reduce the levy. We did the zero-based budget, we know what we need, but conditions did change, and we found 3 things that will impact the budget. The first one is the delay in the aquatic center. So this created labor savings. Some positions originally budgeted for the year are no longer required for that period, which results in a reduction of $180,000. The second one we noticed, administration secured a grant funding for body cameras for protective services. This reduces the amount required from tax-supported funding by a further $15,000. And third, unfortunately going the other way, we identified an admission to the events budget when we brought it to you. So we under budgeted for them by 20 grand. So as a part of this amendment, we would like to make them whole. So the original event budget was supposed to be 100,000, so we're gonna add 20 grand. So together, this makes a $175,000 reduction. One other thing we looked at was the Family Resource Network grant that came to you guys through Shelley. I think it was earlier this month, maybe last meeting.
Yeah.
We were going to include this, but the timing and the approval has not been confirmed at this point. So we didn't want to include this another reduction, because it would be risky in an FRN budget if it didn't get approved. So there is still savings there if it gets approved. We just didn't want to include it here to put them at risk.
Yeah.
So the proposed amendment will reduce the tax levy from 17.7 million to 17.5. And based on the new assessment base, we should be looking at 3.5 tax rate increase as a result of this amendment. It will also, because we're actually reducing the levy this time, it does impact average household monthly. So you can see it goes from 30 to 28 at the very end. So that has a real impact on the monthly, average monthly tip bill. So yeah, that's basically the walkthrough of where we're at, and this is what we'd like to bring to council this afternoon, is this $175,000 reduction to the levy and operating budget.
Okay, well done. Any questions? Self-explanatory. You know, good to go.
Thank you.
All right, awesome.
5 minutes. Jody.
Alright. So, good afternoon. I wanted to talk to council about a proposed change this afternoon with bringing forward a council committee bylaw and a statutory bodies bylaw. Now, one piece I wanted to discuss at committee of the whole today is there is a shift to administration no longer having a council-appointed library board member. So as council may recall, administration has been working with the library board to address concerns that were raised when council adopted the board and committee bylaw. That bylaw consolidated several bylaws into one that is consistent for appointing members to understand their role and meeting procedures, as well as for administration to provide training to those members. For the last few years, administration has been working with the library board's lawyer as well as our own legal counsel to determine how to proceed to address some concerns that were raised by the library board. In the last few months, the library board and administration agreed that the legal support was delaying a resolution and costing all parties significant dollars. So in discussing the concerns directly with the library board representatives, we have identified that many of the concerns are related to potential conflicts of interest that exist from being both a voting library board member at the same time as being a town councillor. So the library board and administration has agreed that no longer having a councillor as a library board member, but rather having a councillor act as a liaison with the library board resolves many of the concerns. So the difference being that annually, when council appoints their board and committee members, the library board would no longer have a council appointed member. However, the individual currently is Councillor McGonigal that does act as that library board council appointed voting member would now act more in a liaison role. So not voting at the library board meetings, however, still being able to work with the library board, continue conversations, share information back and forth. There are some additional concerns that have been addressed in the statutory bodies bylaw. That's on the agenda for presentation later this afternoon, that are mostly concerned with the town's overstep, where the library board is governed by the Libraries Act. So we have pulled a lot of wording out of that bylaw that could potentially conflict with the autonomy that the library holds and has under that Libraries Act. So wanted to make sure council knew that was part of the bylaw that is scheduled for presentation this afternoon, and have the discussion here to see if council has any concerns with that shift. Are there any questions or comments regarding this different approach?
Jenny?
I think it's a really good approach, because when I sat on the library board, like, there was that conflict of, I had to become a library board member, right, and it's still part of council. I was put on there as part of council, and really, like, so then, you know, where do your decision-making abilities lie? And not that actually anything really strenuous came up on that, but it is I think if you're appointed by council as a liaison, you could just be there just to monitor and see that the library board is doing what the library board should be doing. But I don't see the need to have had a vote in anything that went on there, so I think it's a good way to go about this.
Vicky?
As a current sitting member, I don't care if I have a vote or not. That's not the issue. I do have a protocol problem with how this came about. And that is, when I opened the agenda to look at it, I thought, oh, golly, this wasn't mentioned to me by staff, it wasn't mentioned to me by the library board, it wasn't mentioned to me by anybody else on council. How very odd. And is it normal that you would totally bypass the councillor involved to do this? And that's a rhetorical question. It's been done. I just don't think it's a good business practice. I don't think it engenders trust on council. I don't think it engenders trust in any factor. And I, quite frankly, found the process offensive. It would have been nice for somebody to give me a call and say, have you encountered any conflicts? I would have told you. As a lawyer, I'm able to identify conflicts, and any council member should, and they should recuse themselves whenever there's a conflict. But regardless, it doesn't matter to me. I don't think we need a vote on the library board. It reduces the obligations for the person you send as a member, and that's fine. But for me, it became a serious trust issue, and it's going to remain a trust issue.
I apologize that you feel that way. That's why the discussion was to happen here at Committee of the Whole in advance of taking it to be adopted. I can also share that we were working with the library board, and I had asked on at least 2 occasions that the library board had discussed this item and did have the board's approval to move forward in this matter. I'm not sure where the disconnect was in the communications, because I thought I had made it very clear, asking, does the library board specifically support no longer having a council appointed library board member? So I apologize that this came out of left field for you. My understanding was that the meeting earlier this month, that the bylaw, as well as this particular shift, was discussed earlier this month.
No apology necessary, I'm just pointing out my issue.
Any other questions? I think historically, this isn't just from your tenure, this has been going on for as long as I've been here. But there's been discrepancies as to when the council appointed board member, when they vote, should they vote, do they vote? You know, it's muddy. And, yeah, I agree.
It's not the
Vicky,
issue for
it's
me.
not, yeah, no, and I understand that 100%. I think it's a lot cleaner that we are just a liaison that takes feedback both ways and provides what we're doing, what they need from us, what we need from them, etc. I think it's fantastic. Any other questions? See none here, none? We're good. Okay, we can go straight in for a few minutes. We'll go council to administration Q&A for a few minutes if there's anything. Garth?
I just had a couple, was brought up to me, when the Crescent Height, or Crescent Ave, when we're starting to do the water,
Mm-hmm.
it's the houses on the west side. Like, how much advance notice, because they have no access, like the houses on the east side have an alley. The houses on the west side have a ravine, and when they did any of the repairs on, I believe it was the third or fourth house in, then all of a sudden they were trying to hike their groceries from around the corner. Just wondering what notification that the residents will get for that, like on their access.
But they've got alley access too, don't they? The west facing?
No, they're on the ridge. Like,
Oh, I see, I get which ones you're talking about.
just the last
Yeah,
five
The ones
on the
that
west
face
side.
east.
Yeah, the
Don't have
ones that
anything on
face
the back
east.
end. Yeah.
That
What is
just
there,
something
four of
that
them?
they'd asked.
Yeah.
One couple that asked.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
I'll get back to you. Don't know on that exactly what the access plan is for those five, but we'll definitely find out and get back to you.
Okay, no, appreciate it.
You'll see the award coming to next council, so the project is starting to move forward. The procurement process is done, so council will see the award at next meeting, and then it'll be a matter of contractor gearing up and getting on site.
And then one more, there was, the no parking signs on Montgomery Way. We had talked and he had said that was a good idea, was just wondering where we were at. That's that one, there's parking out here, but they're parking there and then you can't get by into their houses. If they park their trucks on,
Incumbent way.
Montgomery Way.
That funny little island.
It's just that little, it's a little strip, there's the boulevard there.
Oh, on Hunter Trail.
No, Mount Rose.
Mount Rose, Montgomery Way.
Riley, I did get an email from Diana that she was looking into
Oh,
how
I
to
knew
proceed
that.
with that one. So I'm not sure that anything has been actioned yet, but Diana is aware of it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause she brought the pictures in that. And then the other one would be to Jody, was the permanent lighting bylaw thing, that's just something
It's on my list. It has not even made its way halfway up the list, but if council would like it to, I
No,
can definitely
it's-
reprioritize.
Daylight is, we have lots of daylight
We
right
got
now.
more daylight, yeah. And you said that was more under the good neighbor, coming up with the good neighbor sort of
I
policy
believe
anyway.
that's probably where it should sit. Right now, it's interesting, we talk about even scents having to remain within the property, like as if you were having a campfire in the backyard and keeping that smoke from going onto your neighbor's property. I don't know how you do, but it's one of those things that you're supposed to be cognizant of, that if the wind is blowing and it's blowing right into your neighbor's house, like, just be a good neighbor. I believe that's where it should sit with lighting as well. That, yes, you can have the lights on, they can be maybe a slow fade or something, but not the disco, like,
Strobes.
yeah.
Vicky?
I brought this up, this is for Riley, I brought this up last fall and you indicated that there were temperature and weather concerns. Where are the damaged catch basins in the Hampton Hills area? When are they, going to be fixed?
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I'm sorry?
I'll have to get back to you, I don't have a date. Which would, I thought it was center that was the issue.
No, there's catch basins in Hampton's that I think I raised.
I thought it was second.
Hamptons and I think maybe.
There's the one on Second, it's been fixed.
It's been
Yeah,
fixed,
noticed
yeah.
that one, but, so if there's some
There's some
inside.
interior, there's some
Inside.
interior ones.
Have we taken over the roads in the Hamptons yet?
I
don't believe top coat
Some
is.
of them we would have.
But not all of them.
Not all of them. I can have Rose take a look and get back to me.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Just to follow up, and sorry, I meant to look this back up to get the formal name of it, but a few meetings ago, I think we'd agreed to send a letter regarding our concerns to the changes to the AISH program, and I just wanted to follow up to make sure that that in fact is underway.
We were, if I recall correctly, we were gonna bring Shelley was gonna come and attend as well and give a summary
Okay,
from that perspective.
perfect.
We didn't write the letter yet, but because it was based upon Shelley coming back, and so we'll have to
Oh,
coordinate with Shelley to come back. She's been, I think that request has gone through, but it's just her timing of her
Okay, fantastic.
schedule, so.
I just didn't want it to fall off the radar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Last question.
Vicky?
Any movement on the sound system upstairs?
We're having another meeting tomorrow to go through that, to figure out what the scope of the work actually should be. There's different perspectives, and they've been having a hard time getting somebody to come in and assess the room that does not want to sell them the same equipment. Basically, they've had some issues with people who can do sound assessment, but you have to buy their equipment. And so just trying to work through that and find those solutions. So
Speedy solution, I would much appreciate.
there might actually be a change today. I haven't been up in the room yet, but staff are gonna come in on Friday and move some speakers around with the county. I don't know if that was done on Friday or not, but they were gonna move some speakers around, take them out from above. If you noticed, some of the speakers are right above the speaker's bench, which was causing a lot of sound feedback. And so you're limited what the volume you can raise the speakers to, so they were gonna try and move those back as far back as they possibly could, and see if that made a change. So we'll see how that works. Hopefully it's got done, but I haven't been up there to check this morning.
I don't think it was, Chris.
No, because they were scheduling for Friday. So, okay.
Michael? Can you have your hand up?
Sure. Just a little thing coming out of the land use bylaw meeting last week. Just a resident brought up about the traffic circle at Spitzy and people parking in it. Did we paint? I don't drive through there much during school, but this resident told me that people will park in the circle. I've never seen it. You drive through there pretty frequently.
I've
since
never
you just
ever
live
seen
west,
that.
but I brought up a concern about that there was even some lines that were painted, I guess lines, yellowing the curbs and the parking, and I don't know, I just brought it up because somebody brought it up and I just wanted to.
I've seen it once.
The only time I've seen it is when there was music in the park and bylaw was already there dealing with it. And I drive through it
Okay.
at least
And they
4 times a
specifically
day.
mentioned music in the park, so.
Yeah,
Thanks.
the Sundays, it's kind of a bit of a free-for-all around there a little bit, but.
Yeah, so that was there. So
Just
anyway.
Garbage.
one more, and this came up out of our meeting when we had it with the county, and it was sort of in our off discussion. Should we be looking at a set of lights at the extra foods for the truck traffic to get out of there? Because I understand what he's talking about, anybody pulling a trailer out to turn either way on to 12th, what's that, 18th Street?
Something like that.
Right in there, is that you can't get out of there because of the traffic coming off of the overpass. It comes off of there so quick, you're not getting a B train out of that intersection. So is it something that we should be revisiting as a traffic light?
Because that's a municipal responsible road, right? That's our. Okay.
That's our part,
That's
that's,
ours.
but, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just as a thought, just hearing that concern, and I know a lot of people have that concern pulling out of there,
Especially truck traffic.
especially the trucks.
Or anybody with their holiday trailer, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
hard. You're crossing two,
Well, there's a couple issues there, right? There's the speed coming off, because they're going above the speed limit, let's be clear. It is,
Yeah.
as soon as they come off that ramp, it's 50 km/h. Yeah.
Yeah, go down, but
right? It's 50 kilometers an hour coming off that ramp, and not many people do that. The other two is the grade issues there with heavier loads that, especially in the wintertime, that it's more problematic, and so there's a couple things that have to solve there. And so interim solutions, not a lot besides increased enforcement, and then taking a look at a budgetary request for traffic and the traffic assessment about what that would look like, what that intersection would ultimately look like, considering development potentially across the road too. We have to think about that.
Can we get a basic budget amount for a set of lights there as to what that would look like if we put it in the budget next year?
Those are two pretty close lights.
They are close.
They are. That's
Yeah.
And coming,
Not ideal.
coming off, I mean, is there enough time then?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
100%.
You might have to do advanced lights or something, but given that the speed limit's 50, I don't even think you need to.
You know, you might need to really hammer enforcement.
What do you mean for it? Good?
Yep.
Okay, we can open it up to public Q&A, if anybody wishes. None?
Nobody else? Well, I will. I'll keep it short. I want to talk to you about the budget amendment and for my understanding. I was here a few weeks ago, I think Jordan spoke to you about these tax consultants and how effective they are at reducing assessments, and so I know that it's about almost $33,800,000 that was reduced in the assessment from approved to final. So my question to that is the town approaching provincial government in any way, shape, or form about some redress to this? Because if it's gonna happen again next year, I would imagine.
There's also some changes to assessments that have happened recently with the Alberta government, has there not, which may cause some issues as well.
Yeah, I haven't understood the full scope of some of the legislative changes yet on what assessment's gonna look like. Seeking redress from the province is, on private assessments, is usually not successful. We can certainly ask, but it's gonna be taking a look at, standardization of the assessment model across the entire province to reduce the challenges that we see on individual assessment approaches. So, a standardized assessment model or a standardized assessment agency across the entire province would then have a better protection on the assessment base from that perspective versus community by community as it stands right now under legislation. So we hadn't thought about any redress with the province. We do finally get their full GPOT at 100% coming for the upcoming tax year, so that's kind of good news because they were at 25% for the longest time, but we haven't thought about that.
I understood that these significant reductions, though, were not in private assessments, but for corporate structures.
Well, private corporations.
Okay, so the same thing, yeah. Okay, well, I don't see any from, I was really kind of frightened by what Jordan pointed out to us at that point in time, because this is only going to keep on and on and on if we don't somehow get a stop to it. So the question I have then for you is in the bottom line, it said, and if I read this correctly, that the final position is, I assume, an increase in property taxes for the residents to the tune of $28 a month? Is that what that says?
On the average home
On the
value.
average home, right, so that's $336 a year.
So it's actually a reduction of $2 from what we approved.
Yeah, I understand.
Oh, okay.
So I'm looking at the final line, and the next thing is, this is not part of your responsibility, but something you're all aware of, because the provincial government, of course, they ask you to collect the education tax. And I know that they published the rate per $100,000 worth of assessment, and in my home, which is very moderate, it's gonna cost me another $300 in tax dollars, plus the $356 on this, and you haven't set the mill rate yet, as I understand, so that might go up even more, I don't know. So the bottom line to that, as a comment, is we're all single taxpayers. And we need to be very aware about what the cumulative is, because it's going to end up that some folks are going to end up not homeless on the streets perhaps, but be compelled to sell a home because they can no longer afford the taxes that are assessed. My comment, thank you.
True, and there's a massive responsibility directly onto our provincial government to do the same thing, right?
I know how we
Like
can do that.
just because they raise theirs doesn't mean we can reduce ours,
No, I
right?
appreciate
We
that.
still have
Yeah.
levels of service that
Yeah.
are demanded by our residents that we have to provide, and that's just the way it is. The education thing is an absolute, it's a tough one to see where they're going with that. I'll leave it at that. So. Anyone else? Carol?
Oh, okay, I just wanna ask about the grain elevator.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, oh,
Um,
notices that too,
yeah.
don't she?
Yeah. Maybe I'll leave that with Chris. Keep
We're
my
putting grain
personal.
into it in the fall.
Well, apparently they don't really know how much weight that building can take because of the foundation. Now, this could be.
I'll let Chris give you the real answer with where it's at.
So basically, what's happening right now is there's some corrections to the structure that have to take place. But it's not about weight bearing on the foundation per se, but there's other beams and stuff that they have to make some changes, as well as some drainage issues that the grade was poured at too low of an elevation that they have to make some waterproofing amendments. It's all architect and engineer supervised.
Okay, so that's like you saying you've got an engineer that has checked the structure.
It is all, like the builder's own engineer and architect has to certify that it's safe, provide those reports to our safety codes officer, and go forward for that. So they are working on some deficiencies, for sure. They've got some pilings that have been drilled inappropriately. That's one were drilled crooked. That was one of the things that you see on the front that they have to go in and correct, but they're not structured. They're just holding those those balconies. And then they also have the tieback that they have to deal with as well from a waterproofing perspective. It's now blowing all off because of the last wind. And their permit, they're coming forward in early May, I believe, to extend their permit, their building permit, because their building permit actually and development permit expires at the end of May. And they have to apply for an extension from that perspective.
Well, I mean, there's just nobody kind of working on it. And then they came in about 5 days, and they dug up something at the back of the building, and then they broke a gas line, so then everything came to a stop, and ATCO was sitting out there in the yard for 2 days, and I mean, there's no way we can get information as to, how dire that was, or
Right.
just, there's very little work going on in that building.
So our safety codes, like when we dove into this a few months ago, safety codes put a stop work order on it while they reviewed the whole structure, right? So we shut it down. And that's where it triggered that they've got to go back in because they didn't have inspections that were done properly on time. And so they had to tear the drywall and everything else out. We made them do all that. So we are on it. We have a fantastic, Harold that's in safety codes
Okay.
he's a monster on these
Yeah,
guys,
this is
so
good
he's
to hear.
on it. What happened with ATCO, I don't know, you'd probably have to, if there was a major emergency, you would absolutely know about it, but, yeah, we're on it, and it's not an ideal project, it's not going as smooth as we all want to, it's not being done as well as we all want to, but, like Chris said, they are coming back because they have, from the time their development permit was approved, they've got 2 years to finish the project. And doesn't sound like they're gonna meet that 2-year deadline, so Riley's shaking his head, there's no way. So they have to come back and it will have to be in a public meeting, Carol. And where we can ask lots of questions directly to
Okay, well,
them.
maybe they'll just make an Airbnb out of it.
A lot of air.
It still has to be safe.
There'll be a lot of errors. Yeah, it's not ideal. We are all on the same page. Anyone else with questions?
I have a question about clarification on traditional versus commercial, but given my disillusionment of the whole process right now, I'll redirect my questions elsewhere. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Linda, birdhouses? Nothing?
Still,
Okay. I'm looking too. If there's nothing else, meeting adjourned at 2:15.